Welcome to JBS's extensive coverage of the 69th Annual United Nations General Assembly. I'm Ellie Cohanim.
And I'm Ron Jacobsohn with a matching tie to your dress.
We matched!
Fashion. But we're not here for fashion, of course. We're here to cover the Israeli statement, as it's called in UN terminology, which is the UN speech of Benjamin Netanyahu at the United Nations. But what happened here 2 hours before the speech?
Tell us, Ron, what happened?
Well, we had a press conference with the Israeli Foreign Minister, Avigdor Lieberman, who preceded the big speech of Benjamin Netanyahu. You know, lots of things happening behind the scenes here. Why he actually went on 2 hours before of Netanyahu. He and Netanyahu are kind of playing the good cop, bad cop, where Lieberman is definitely the bad cop and will say things that maybe Netanyahu on the stage of the General Assembly cannot allow him to say as the Prime Minister of Israel.
First of all, I must say that the last speech of Mr. Mahmoud Abbas, it really was a message of hatred and incitement. It's clear that he has no intention to make peace with Israel, and it's not the first time. We remember Mr. Mahmoud Abbas in Annapolis with Prime Minister Ehud Olmert and with Secretary of State Condi Rice, and the same we saw the last days. The second point, I'm not sure that he really has legitimacy to speak on behalf of Palestinian people. It's clear that he has no control on Gaza Strip, and he postponed his elections more than 4 years, presidential and parliament elections. And I have some doubts with his authority. And maybe the last point, the problem with Mr. Mahmoud Abbas that he always insulted, and he remembers every slight inflicted upon him since he was born. It's not a way to build some credibility in your relations with your partners. And if there are some questions, I think that Mr. Mahmoud Abbas, he lost his way, and because he failed with all his domestic issues, he tries to resolve his domestic problems with some rhetoric, escalation in his rhetoric here in UN on the international arena. But it's clear that he has no support, and he lost his way.
Mr. Foreign Minister, on Iran, there appears to be a deal in the works where Iran is allowed to keep more of its uranium enrichment and other nuclear materials. What do you think of that, and have you heard about the deal?
We hear about this kind of approach. We think it's a bad deal, and we have an experience what is a bad deal, and you can take the example from North Korea. And for us it's completely unacceptable. It also, to clarify my position, if Iranians will achieve nuclear capabilities, the immediate result, the consequences will be a crazy nuclear arms race in all Middle East. And of course we keep all options on the table. We are monitoring, we are following, and of course we keep all options on the table. Thank you. The last question. The question was about some comprehensive solution, reasonable solution between us and Palestinians. Again, to repeat myself, we're really ready for comprehensive, reasonable solution. We are looking, we are trying many years to achieve some strategic breakthrough in our relations with the Palestinians, but it's not only depends on Israel. We need a reliable partner from the other side, and I'm sorry to say that we don't have a reliable partner from the Palestinian side. And it's a problem. I think that we proved our desire to achieve real peace, not as a lip service, but in real actions. We signed peace agreements with Egypt and Jordan. We gave up territories 3 times more than Israel. We withdrew in Gaza Strip until the very last inch, according 67 line. We evacuated 21 flourishing settlements, and we transferred more than 10,000 Jews from Gaza Strip. The result that we suffered more than 18,000 missiles and shells on Israel since disengagement, since withdrawing from Gaza. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the people of Israel pray for peace. But our hopes and the world's hopes for peace are in danger, because everywhere we look, militant Islam is on the march. It's not militants, it's not Islam, it's militant Islam. And typically, its first victims are other Muslims, but it spares no one. Christians, Jews, Yazidis, Kurds, no creed, no faith, no ethnic group is beyond its sights. And it's rapidly spreading in every part of the world. You know the famous American saying, all politics is local? For the militant Islamists, all politics is global, because their ultimate goal is to dominate the world. Now that threat might seem exaggerated to some, since it starts out small, like a cancer that attacks a particular part of the body. But left unchecked, the cancer grows, metastasizing over wider and wider areas. To protect the peace and security of the world, we must remove this cancer before it's too late. Last week, many of the countries represented here rightly applauded President Obama for leading the effort to confront ISIS. And yet, weeks before, some of these same countries, the same countries that now support confronting ISIS, opposed Israel for confronting Hamas. They evidently don't understand that ISIS and Hamas are branches of the same poisonous tree. ISIS and Hamas share a fanatical creed, which they both seek to impose well beyond the territory under their control. As Hamas's charter makes clear, Hamas's immediate goal is to destroy Israel. But Hamas has a broader objective. They also want a caliphate. Hamas shares the global ambitions of its fellow militant Islamists. And that's why its supporters wildly cheered in the streets of Gaza as thousands of Americans were murdered in 9/11. And that's why its leaders condemned the United States for killing Osama bin Laden, whom they praised as a holy warrior. So when it comes to their ultimate goals, Hamas is ISIS and ISIS is Hamas. And what they share in common, all militant Islamists share in common. Boko Haram in Nigeria, Al-Shabaab in Somalia, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Al-Nusra in Syria, the Mahdi army in Iraq, and the Al-Qaeda branches in Yemen, Libya, the Philippines, India, and elsewhere. Ladies and gentlemen, militant Islam's ambition to dominate the world seems mad. But so too did the global ambitions of another fanatic ideology that swept into power 8 decades ago. The Nazis believed in a master race. The militant Islamists believe in a master faith. They just disagree who among them will be the master of the master faith. That's what they truly disagree about. And therefore, the question before us is whether militant Islam will have the power to realize its unbridled ambitions. There is one place where that could soon happen: the Islamic State of Iran. Don't be fooled by Iran's manipulative charm offensive. It's designed for one purpose, and for one purpose only: to lift the sanctions and remove the obstacles to Iran's path to the bomb. The Islamic Republic is now trying to bamboozle its way to an agreement that will remove the sanctions it still faces and leave it with the capacity of thousands of centrifuges, to enrich uranium. This would effectively cement Iran's place as a threshold military nuclear power. And in the future, at the time of its choosing, Iran, the world's most dangerous regime in the world's most dangerous region, would obtain the world's most dangerous weapons. Allowing that to happen would pose the gravest threat to us all. There's only one responsible course of action to address this threat. Iran's nuclear military capabilities must be fully dismantled. Make no mistake, ISIS must be defeated. But to defeat ISIS and leave Iran as a threshold nuclear power is to win the battle and lose the war. Ladies and gentlemen, despite the enormous challenges facing Israel, I believe we have an historic opportunity. After decades of seeing Israel as their enemy, leading states in the Arab world increasingly recognize that together we and they face many of the same dangers. And principally, this means a nuclear-armed Iran and militant Islamist movements gaining ground in the Sunni world. Our challenge is to transform these common interests to create a productive partnership, one that would build a more secure, peaceful, and prosperous Middle East. Together we can strengthen regional security, we can advance projects in water, in agriculture, in transportation, in health, and energy, in so many fields. I believe the partnership between us can also help facilitate peace between Israel and the Palestinians. Now, many have long assumed that an Israeli-Palestinian peace can help facilitate a broader rapprochement between Israel and the Arab world. But these days, I think it may work the other way around. Namely, that a broader rapprochement between Israel and the Arab world may help facilitate an Israeli-Palestinian peace. And therefore, to achieve that peace, we must look not only to Jerusalem and Ramallah, but also to Cairo, to Amman, Abu Dhabi, Riyadh, and elsewhere. I believe peace can be realized with the active involvement of Arab countries, those that are willing to provide political, material, and other indispensable support. See, in Israel we have a record of making the impossible possible. We've made a desolate land flourish. and with very few natural resources, we've used the fertile minds of our people to turn Israel into a global center of technology and innovation. And peace, of course, would enable Israel to realize its full potential and to bring a promising future, not only for our people, not only for the Palestinian people, but for many, many others in our region.
I find Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to be truly inspiring, and what's interesting about Bibi, as they like to call him in Israel, is that he understands the American culture and mentality so well. There's really nobody else in Israel who has the command of the English language, who is as eloquent a speaker as Bibi is. And so what I found interesting was that he seemed to have three important notes that he wanted to share with us. One was the threat of Islamic extremism across the world, and I think that the Prime Minister was making the case that whatever threatens the Middle East and Israel will eventually spread across the globe, and unfortunately I think we're beginning to see signs of that. Secondly, he always likes to remind everyone about the threat of a nuclear Iran, and that's something that I think Prime Minister Netanyahu has really made the hallmark of his time in office, is really not letting both Israelis and the world forget the threat of a nuclear Iran. One other point that I think is really important to note about Prime Minister Netanyahu's speech today was perhaps a hallmark, a sea change for Israeli policy, and that was his conversation about how peace in the Middle East has a new model for us to think about, which is the Israelis establishing peaceful and friendly relations with their Arab neighbors first, and then reaching peace with the Palestinians afterwards. And I thought that that was a huge potential shift in the Middle East. Ron, what do you think about that change in the Middle East?
Well, this is something that he has been talking about for many, many years, and now it's here on the world stage, so to say. It is interesting. There's some issues that he's brought to life, like connecting ISIS with Iran. You know, this is something that was important, and we'll see how that will resonate with the White House and the State Department. Yes, again, about the Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas losing any touch with reality as a follow-up to his speech last week here at the UNGA. As we were here, we saw all the big turnout of the Jewish American community. We had Ron Lauder here with Malcolm Homeline, we had Sheldon Edelson, we had Jerry Silverman. I mean, all the big Jewish leaders were here present and to cheer and to support Netanyahu, which is very, very important, because the speech was all about Palestinians, Iran, etc., but there was not so much talk about the link between the diaspora and Israel. And here we saw that no matter what, the American Jewish community is standing by Israel and by Netanyahu. And I got to talk to some of the reporters that were here on scene from Israel and some of the Jewish leaders just minutes after the speech to get their reactions. Let's have a look.
The news is that he said that he actually adopted an idea put forth by Foreign Minister Lieberman that perhaps peace with the Arab countries has to proceed or pave the way for peace with the Palestinians. I don't think this is an option that the Arab countries will adopt, but it's interesting to see whether there'll be any follow-up to this suggestion.
It was really clear that the concept of militant Islam is a threat to the entire world, and that it can't be tolerated by anyone. And Israel has the right to secure its borders, has the right to defend herself against Hamas, which is a militant Islamist organization. And Israel wants to work hand in hand with the world to eradicate this disease. As the Prime Minister said, one of his greatest opportunities and challenges is that he is the Prime Minister of the State of Israel, and he takes responsibility for Jewish people worldwide, including the diaspora. And his relationship is truly something very, very special, and he truly means it sincerely.
Well, I think it was a very powerful speech laying out an agenda for the world, which says you have to be truthful about the reality of what is going on about ISIS and the other militant Islamists in the world. He speaks on behalf of the Jewish people as well as the Prime Minister. He feels it very passionately, so we're very, very proud of his speech here today.
Prime Minister Netanyahu presented here a very interesting set of equations. The first equation is Hamas equal ISIS. The second equation is that ISIS equal Iran. And he would like to see that the world react towards Iran the same way they are operating regarding ISIS, and vice versa regarding Hamas. This is very ambitious, Ron, especially now when we know that the State Department and the White House are saying that the terror of Hamas is not equal to the terror of ISIS. So therefore, Netanyahu here again is presenting to the Israeli public, but also to the American public, because I watched and I saw that the three news networks in the United States, CNN, MSNBC, and Fox, broadcasted the Netanyahu live in full, and it was very interesting. And this is portraying to the American public, if you want, a different alternative or a different route than the one that the White House is portraying right now. And if you listen carefully, Netanyahu mentioned another thing, and the other thing was the fact that if you will let Iran continue with their nuclear program, eventually you maybe will win the battle, but you will lose the game. You will lose the war. And this is, if you ask me, a sort of a criticism of the White House policy. And Netanyahu is doing it 48 hours before he is going to meet with the President of the United States. And we all know about their tense relationship. Lieberman had to portray itself as an alternative. And therefore, he knows that Netanyahu is going to present a very tough line regarding Abu Mazen, so he must be tougher. And therefore, we heard here the fact that he thinks that Abu Mazen, lost direction. Absolutely, if you translate what he said in Hebrew, he lost his mind. And therefore, he's not a viable partner anymore. And you saw the same thing with Netanyahu's speech. Actually, he discredited Abu Mazen to a degree that Israel is not going to negotiate with him anymore. And notice the fact that he didn't mention in any way the two-state solution. So like the Bar Ilan famous speech, all the previous speeches of the United Nations are gone. No one is talking right now about two-state solution, but he presented a very ambitious plan to bring over the moderate Arab world, if you would like, Saudi Arabia and Egypt, and towards them to try and to find a creative solution that will bring the region peace and prosperity. But what the actual meaning of that is that we are not going to see any resumption of the peace talks in the near future.
Now, you are a veteran correspondent who have covered a lot of the UNGAs in past years. Compared to the past, have you seen more or less interest in what the Israeli delegation had to say?
Netanyahu arrived here because of Rosh Hashanah late, because, as you know, this place during the first days of the General Assembly is like the speed dating of the diplomatic world. Generally, you need to fly many hours if you're Prime Minister of Israel to meet important leaders. But here, if you are at the right time, at the right moment, you can speed dating them 15 minutes after the other. One door will be open, the other will be closed, and we'll see this shuttle diplomacy. This year it's gone. Netanyahu arrived, and the only Prime Minister who was still in town was the Indian Prime Minister, the Prime Minister of India, and therefore I think that the meeting between them that was held last night was very important. It was even more crucial and important than the meeting that Netanyahu will have in a few days at the White House with President Obama, because you know, what is the real reason that Obama invited this time Netanyahu? It's not because Obama really wanted to see Prime Minister Netanyahu. Netanyahu was the one that wanted to meet the president, and the only reason is the November election, the midterm election, because at the White House they still believe that Netanyahu has an influence on the Israeli, on the American Jewish constituency, and therefore it's not good to slam the door in the face of the Israeli Prime Minister.
I mean, look, the world is focused on what goes on with ISIS. The world is focused on the Ebola. You saw how much the world is focused on climate change. You saw countries here that feel, that this is life and death issues for them. So I would say the world is focused on big stuff. And we should all make sure that the world does not forget that the biggest strategic threat to the region is Iran. Iran, with nuclear capabilities, can change the whole region and beyond. The support of world Jewry, and especially in the United States, is absolutely crucial. I mean, the amazing bond between the Jewish people, the American people, and the people of Israel is a bond that transcends, political divides. It goes on both sides of the aisle. And this is an important pillar of the relationship between Israel and the United States. And you want to use this opportunity to say Shana Tova and Chatima Tova in those 10 important days where we all look to the Almighty and say sorry for our sins and thank you for bringing us to today.
I think, Ellie, it's going to be very interesting to see how what happened here today with Lieberman and Netanyahu is going to resonate in Washington. Netanyahu is still going to meet with John Kerry, and then later on in the week with President Obama. They haven't seen so much eye to eye. Hopefully now, as this campaign against ISIS is gathering momentum, they'll understand, what Israel is going through a little better.
That's a big hope, and I think big questions for all of us to ponder as the Prime Minister makes his next stops in D.C. Well, from all of us here at JBS, we thank you so much for joining us for our special coverage of the United Nations General Assembly 69th session. I'm Ellie Cohanim.
And I'm Ron Jacobsohn. See you soon.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support Shalom TV on JBS with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double high or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the Shalom TV website homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to GEM. To GEM, P.O. Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.